The city of Tillamook, Oregon, located in the heart of Oregon's coastal dairylands, lies adjacent to Tillamook Bay. Designated as an estuary of national significance, Tillamook Bay is a diverse and productive ecosystem and watershed. Approximately 1 mile north of downtown Tillamook, the Southern Flow Corridor Landowner Preferred Alternative Project is located at the head of Tillamook Bay and at the confluence of the Wilson, Trask, and Tillamook rivers. This innovative project will restore 521 acres of tidal wetland habitat while reducing flooding to 3,000 acres of land in the community of Tillamook. The project, developed over many years through the efforts of a large and varied set of stakeholders, is unique, bringing federal government agencies together with state and local partners on a collaborative project that seeks to serve the needs of citizens, reduce flooding, provide economic benefits to the community, and restore important habitat for native fish and wildlife species.
Tillamook Bay in particular is unique in a couple of senses. It's one of the larger estuaries on the Oregon coast, and it's also been one of the most highly manipulated estuaries in terms of diking and filling and draining of wetlands. Well, a number of the fish species, particularly Chinook and coho, are really dependent on the estuary for their juvenile life stage. They come down to the estuary to rear. These are fish that are going to use the tidal channels, the fringes of estuary salt marshes for their rearing. And since the time Europeans settled this area till now, we've lost about 85% of the estuarine wetlands that these fish had historically.
I showed up down in Tillamook County. They had been wrestling with flooding that was very destructive economically. It was a problem for the reputation of the county. There had been multiple presidentially declared flood declarations, disaster declarations.
Here is the big reason most people cannot get into Tillamook tonight: a flood, basically surrounding the community, stranding drivers, making it virtually impossible to get in or out of Tillamook tonight. Motorists left their cars in the middle of what was once Highway 101. Today, a state of emergency was declared by Governor Kitzhaber.
Flooding is indigenous to this area, and it always has been. Last winter, last December, when it rained so much, it was the first year in the memory of anyone I've talked to, and I talk to people who are 90 years old regularly, first time they ever saw it flooded that much, 4 feet deep, and it came up on both sides of 101.
People were getting tired of trying to address flooding issues. And how do we fix it? And there was as many ideas as there were people about how to reduce flooding in Tillamook. Betsy and I were chosen by the governor as co-conveners, and then we started through the Oregon Solutions process.
Oregon Solutions is a collaborative problem-solving process, an opportunity for a group of frequently not like-minded folks to coalesce around a problem statement and postulate a solution and then work to effectuate that.
And that's where the Southern Flow Corridor project came through.
I've been working on this project for more than a decade. The project area is 640 acres, and by the time we're done, we will have restored 521 acres into a range of habitats from mudflat to high salt marsh. During a flood, the water crosses 101 and immediately hits a whole series of cross levees and old dredge material disposal sites. It backs up when it hits those obstacles, flows north along 101 and floods the north end of town. The flood reduction component of this project is to remove those levees and dredge material sites to create a corridor for the water to reach the bay. Once you remove those levees, you open up a whole series of ancient channels. So you create 14 miles of habitat for salmon at the confluence of major salmon-producing rivers. And I can imagine there may be an increasing number of folks who come to this area to watch the newly emerged portion of the bay as it evolves. This project has a myriad of benefits for fish and for people.
My father moved up here from Ontario, California in 1977, so I'm the second generation to run this particular dairy here. The project in one form or another has been going on since the late 90s. It's been controversial. It's been a long road. Where some of the controversy comes in on a local level is loss of agricultural property. But this is important for Tillamook and Oregon, and so we took another look at it and approached it from a different angle. We wanted to help navigate that conversation to a conclusion to where we are today. The goals of the project has been to maximize the flood reduction benefits that we can get out of it by maintaining as much usable agricultural properties adjacent to any restoration work that's done in that area, and also create opportunities to enhance the farmability of those properties, and we're feeling pretty good about it.
Theoretically, it's supposed to drop the water about 18 inches on the fringes of the flood. Well, that is where a lot of people live, and that was pretty exciting.
But we're trying to control that last inch or foot that creates the in my home scenario. And the trauma and the stress that's involved in that kind of event for somebody, I mean, is devastating.
You know, thousands of acres this is going to help out. Of people with residents out and about and farmers. It's kind of a win-win for us.
This area we're standing in right here is the Wilson Trask wetland, then known as the Tillamook wetlands, and now it's known as the Southern Flow Corridor. The school has used this area since 2005 as an outside laboratory. So we bring students here from second grade all the way through the community college. We've been doing a lot of invasive species mapping. There's an awful lot of invasive plants out in this area. So in flooding those with salt water is probably going to do a lot to return this area away from its non-native condition back towards a native condition as to what it was before they built all the dikes that are around this area. And it's going to be fun to come back now and use it as a living laboratory as it changes back into a tidal wetland. So it'll be different. It'll be a whole different habitat, but it's going to be a really fantastic opportunity.
Reconstruction activities began at the project site in February of 2016. The contractor, Thompson Brothers Excavating, mobilized to the site the first week in May to begin construction in earnest. Activities included the demolition of former farm buildings, the removal of a house, the clearing of brush and trees, the removal of existing levees, the construction of new levees farther away from the estuary, the elimination and relocation of tide gates, the excavation of approximately 234,000 cubic yards of fill, the excavation and connection of tidal channels, and the remediation of contaminated fill materials at a former mill site. Permitting and funding the project required a substantial investment from federal agency partners who recognized its potential benefits not just for fish and wildlife, but also for the community. A new model that could be adopted by future projects nationwide.
Cut!
Project construction concluded in November of 2016. Post-construction monitoring operations begin in 2017.
Getting to follow this site whose context we understand really well so we know what makes it tick, and getting to measure those things that make it tick and follow it through its restoration process, that alone is really exciting and wonderful. Effectiveness monitoring is measuring things to see whether the restoration worked or not. So often for the first year or two after you remove the dikes and the tide water is coming back in, it's very wet, and the plants that are there don't really like this new set of conditions and they're going to die back. All that dying vegetation produces a ton of food for insects, and so often that's very productive for fish. The young salmon are going to be in there in force eating all of the different little insects that are feeding on that decaying vegetation. And also lots of shorebirds and waterfowl, and it'll support a whole lot of life at every stage of its restoration.
In terms of Chinook and coho populations in Tillamook Bay, if you compare what we have now to what we believe we had historically, we may have had as many as 200,000 coho coming back on average. Now, if we get 20,000 to Tillamook Bay, that's a pretty decent year. Chinook maybe not as heavily impacted. We estimate the population probably averages around 15,000 fish. Historically, it was probably more like 50 or 60,000. In terms of benefits to fish and fisheries, this project is going to restore about 28% of the habitat that's currently available. Mother Nature is going to take over and shape the area like she sees fit. We estimate that increased production could be as much as 7,000 adult fish return on a good year. So that's huge. They're certainly iconic species and we need to protect them, and the more that we have, the happier everybody's going to be.
You have 5 major river systems that flow into essentially a very small area. What's the resolution to this? You're not just going to move all the businesses out of town. You're not just going to buy up all the dairies. You're not going to say, well, let's just dam the rivers up. You've got to work together to say, okay, this is what we have. Now let's figure out what we have and how can we make this work.
The Southern Flow Corridor project is the culmination of a huge community exercise designed to try to harmonize divergent points of view about how to fix a chronic problem in Tillamook County.
We're going to save the best farmland in the project, reducing flooding over 3,000 acres and benefiting 540 structures. That's a big benefit from a 640-acre project area.
We are the estuary. Everybody here in Tillamook is part of that estuary. We all need to work on having a healthy estuary. We all participate in it, we all benefit from it. And without a healthy estuary, we're not going to have a robust dairy community here. It really moves into a win-win situation as long as we always continue to bring everybody together.